Hello and welcome to the Startups of London podcast. I'm your host Ozan and the founder of Startups of London. Today, I'm joined by a surprise guest, Dash Tabor. Dash is the founder of TUBR, a London-based journey app designed to help you control your tube experience and plan around the uncomfortable moments associated with using public transport. Welcome, Dash.
Hi, it's great to be here.
So we actually met with Dash for our audience who's not aware of this out there. We actually met in what we called a live stream consulting session. It was an experimental concept. I think we did 13 episodes of those. And the way it worked was a founder and two consultants used to come together in a live streamed session that was broadcast on YouTube. I introduced people, got out of the way, and then they had a session. So the interesting thing is we did this. This was, I just checked before this podcast recording. It went live on September 29th, 2020. So it's been a while. This is a first for us as well, re-inviting a founder after 1 year. But it's something I always wanted to do. So, Dash, how has the last year been for you?
It's been wonderful. It's been a roller coaster of ups and downs. Some weeks I think, yay, this is absolutely going exactly the direction I want it to go. And then there have been weeks where I sit there and think, am I just basically playing house in a business? But it always comes back around. And I think that now we're definitely moving in the direction that we want to be. So it's been good.
I'm so happy to hear it. It takes time building a business, doesn't it?
Yes. And I think the media definitely portrays this overnight success. And that's just not the reality. Anything that you want is going to take a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of effort. And so it definitely has been a very rewarding journey so far, but a difficult one.
I think I agree with that as well. In my personal experience, before I started all this entrepreneurial journey 5-6 years ago, I used to think if you're really good in 6 months, perhaps a year and a half, you can actually build a lot of wealth building a startup and take it off the ground. But now I think I would adjust my projection to 3 or 5 or even 6, 7, maybe 10 years, because it takes a lot of time to build a business. There are a lot of moving parts. So how has the business TUBR has changed over the last year?
It's actually changed significantly. When I talked to you all in September 2020, we hadn't even really started building a product. I was still trying to build the team. I was trying to bring on the right partnerships and get access to the right data. And our goal at the time was just to be a mobile app company. We wanted to build a mobile app that helped people miss the busy periods on public transport. And we were starting with the London Underground. And we quickly realized that what I was discussing when we spoke last time was just access to data. And we quickly realized that the access to data was limited, and even the data that was out there really wouldn't help us solve our problem. So in order to build what we wanted to build, we built a time series machine learning algorithm that can process with fewer data points. And that really became like a hidden piece of IP that we had. And once we finally started building the app and just released a version, we didn't even do a launch, we just released, we started talking to people about what we were doing. And people kept saying, well, could your tech do this for me? Could your tech do that for me? And we realized in June, actually it was probably July, that we needed to pivot the business, and that our biggest way to solve the problem was to address this technology gap in the market. So we pivoted, and we are now a deep tech machine learning company. And since then, we've seen our opportunities just increase significantly. We have a really wonderful pipeline for having just pivoted 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And are actually raising our first round. So really excited about that.
That's good news. In a business, you always start with an assumption, which is almost always wrong. And the right way to actually pivot the business is to listen to customers and and really dig into what they are trying to get done. The jobs to be done framework, I think, is very useful for that purpose. Just asking, what is the person who's using the app trying to get accomplished? What is it, the job they are trying to tick off? And the more insight you have into it, then the better match in terms of product market fit you have. So can you go into a bit more detail in terms of what was it exactly that your clients, your customers, your users wanted from you? What was the job they are trying to get done using the app?
So what, the proposition that we really started with was, we're collecting this amazing data and we can help you manage how people are moving around the city so that we don't have these crowded spaces. And I think that is a goal, but there are bigger goals. And so what we started having people ask us is, well, could I predict where bikes are going to go so I can build better bike lanes? Can I predict how people are going to take part in a particular activity when they're on holiday so that they can have a better experience on that activity? Can I predict how people are going to move around a hospital so that we can make sure that we don't have these crowded spaces in hospitals? And that's really where we saw that change happening, because this algorithm can predict in smaller, more dynamic environments. And what we realized is that there's a small data problem in big data. We talk about big data, but especially in time series, you only receive about 20% of the data needed to use predictive technologies in real time. And there's this real time gap of being able to predict in real time in dynamic environments. And that's what our technology solved.
That's really interesting. And perhaps it's a change for the better, because predictive algorithms, I think, are going to be big. The way we create data, but also real time is a big component of it. I'd like to segue to another point from here, and we can circle back to the business, because I have more questions about the business. But in terms of you personally, I know being a founder, being an entrepreneur changes each person differently. But in your case, how have you changed with the business over the last year?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, how have I changed? I definitely don't take any BS. I can very much look at something and be like, is it a priority? Is it not? I manage my emotional stress and capacity a lot differently and a lot better now. And I think that, I have two very important priorities to me, and one is the business, and other is fostering the relationships and friendships that are most sustainable and important to me. And everything else just feels like noise, and I just let it fall. I kind of let it fall away. So I think that's one of the ways I've changed personally as a entrepreneur. And I also take kind of every scenario into my mind and think, how would that work in the business, or how would that work for future employees, so that we can build and foster the culture that we want the company to have. So it's a great place to work. And that's really important to me and my co-founder.
Perhaps even the bigger question is, are you happy about this change?
Yes. It reduces a lot of angst and anxiety. Not trying to be everything to everybody all the time I have to be so many things to so many people that I can't let go of right now, but I can't be everything. So, just focusing on what's really important is probably the way we should all be.
The feedback loop idea was very fascinating to me. I heard it first from Ray Dalio, then in Nassim Taleb's books. It's also mentioned. They also take place in a lot of other places as well. But the simple idea that the systems that you interact with, let's say you work in a large organization of 5,000 people, it's very political. You have to be really measured in terms of what you say. And in such an environment, for example, as a contrast, the feedback you get might be kind of detached from reality. It might be based on other people's ideas, like the internal politics, etc. But when you're an entrepreneur, the feedback loop you are really enmeshed with is the market conditions themselves, and they're as real as it gets. So it kind of has this effect of really bringing you back down to earth, being a hyper realist in a sense. And it's an incredible feature, I think, being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you have to really have some thick skin. And I think also what I didn't realize when I went into this, and I think a lot of times people don't necessarily realize, is there's kind of multiple markets that you're working in. So you're obviously looking at your your customer consumer market and trying to find that product market fit, because that's how you're going to grow and how you're going to make money. But you also have this investor market of trying to know how to speak to your investors, because it's two very different conversations. So you're receiving different feedback from both different markets. You have your customer market that really should be leading your decisions and what happens. And then you have your investor market that's seen a lot of businesses and what's happening. And they're saying, ooh, I know your market's saying that, but I've seen that fail. So I don't know. And you have to be able to balance both of those feedbacks to strike the right balance, or to know I actually am going to put my foot down on this, and I'm only going to talk to investors that believe this same thesis or what. But yeah, you got to have a thick skin for sure.
So what do you know today that you didn't know about the business and the market last year?
Everything. I think back. I think some of the best days of starting a business are those first few months when you actually really don't know anything, and you're just kind of pushing your idea.
Everything is possible. All optimism.
Yeah, you're still in ignorance is bliss, and you think you're really busy, but you actually have no idea. Yeah, I definitely think one of the things that I know now is that this has led us to a gap that creates more opportunity for us to complete our mission. And I actually feel now that we have a very viable, sustainable, successful business that we're building. Where back then I felt like I was still kind of going on a whim and a desire. So I feel a lot more confident in what we're building now.
In terms of the business metrics, let's take a broad overview of that. I think it should be useful for the audience out there. In terms of the revenue, the team, funding, the big breaks you had over the last year, what would you like to share with us?
Oh, just kind of some of our wins, you mean?
How are you doing in terms of revenue, for example? How many, I mean, you're focused more on B2B, B2C. How big is the team? Yeah, and like those moments of, I think there are those big breaks in every business, right? Because sometimes things build up and then you have this good opportunity. It really changes the structure of things. Anything you'd like to mention with that? I'd be curious to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would kind of envision the way our team has grown and reduced is almost like blowing up a balloon and then shrinking it back down. And, and I think when we were still very much mobile app focused, we had a much larger team. And when I say large, it was between 3 and 5 people. Since we've pivoted in the last few months, we've really dropped down to just my founder and I. So I have one technical co-founder and myself, and we are now in the process of building that team back up. So right now it's just the 2 of us, but we're about to start hiring as soon as we close this round. And I think that's been one of the more interesting, tricky things to figure out is what skills do we need in the business at this time? And also when it's time for people to move on or to make a change, allowing that to happen and really thinking about the business first. But we've had in the last few weeks, we were recognized in the Hayes and Impact Ventures Good for Tech Good for Tech competition. And by Microsoft for Startups, that was the judge as a top pre-seed company. Mm-hmm. We have 150K committed in our round. So we're looking to close that up by the end of November. We've just been recently accepted into the Wayra Transport Five Spring program.
I know that.
So
I went to an event. I was in the panel for an event there. They're actually good, Vera. It's owned by O2, I believe. No?
yes, it's O2, Telefonica,
Telefonica.
Digital Catapult. They also work with Deloitte. So we actually just started this week and we're really excited about the program. I think it's absolutely amazing. We are still pre-rev, but getting very close to revenue. We have about 16 opportunities in our pipeline, most of them hot for January time. That's one of the reasons we're trying to close our round so quickly so that we have the capacity to deliver everything we need to deliver. So, lots of wins there as far as, the goals that we've set ourselves and then actually delivering on them. One of the metrics we set was 5 POCs before the end of the year. I think the only reason we wouldn't hit them is just because we're such a small team. So we definitely have the opportunity for it.
Indeed, very, very exciting. I mean, I wish you all the best with it. While we're at it, what roles are you hiring for? And perhaps it's always a good idea for the audience. If you have those kind of skills, you can reach out to Dash and introduce yourself, perhaps. And then
yes,
you might be a good fit. So what roles are you hiring for?
So we probably won't be hiring until the start of the new year, but we're looking for technical roles. So either back-end devs, data scientists, data engineers, machine learning technicians. And then also I will be looking for a strong sales leader, ideally with someone with a bit of pre-sales as well to come join me from a sales perspective. Oh, and lastly, a marketing professional that can help us start bringing in the funnel for, machine learning and B2B space.
There are 12 lessons from the previous episode we've done together. Like, if you have the patience for this, I'd like to just read them through, and I'd like to hear which of these have been most useful for you. Would you like to play this micro game? Should I read these through to you? Stop. Like, there are 12 of them. Just note down like number 5, number 6, or number 3, whatever. For the most useful ones, it's like a bit hindsight is always 20/20, right? So the number 1, identify your ideal target partner. Number 2, specific targeting of target personas through ads. Number 3, clarify what's in it for them. Start with the lowest hanging fruit. Number 4, consider focusing on larger employers who want their employees to travel safely. Number 5, make sure you have the right people in the room. This is not always the top person. Sometimes it's technical people. Sometimes it's the product owner. Number 6, it will be helpful to be very, very specific and crystal clear about what you want, especially in a B2B meeting. Number 7, create a feeling of partnership through collaboration tools. 8, it might pay to be pushy sometimes, especially in this age of digital communications, where it is more difficult to build rapport. Number 9, if the customer is not biting, acknowledge that this is perhaps not an appetite for them. Number 10, there are multiple ways into large organizations. Perhaps a team is not interested, but you can go around the back and find another team. Number 11, stay engaged while pushing through a real understanding of customer needs and wants. And finally, number 12, be ready to do micro pivots during the meeting if you discover a need. So out of these 12, which were most useful to you over the last year?
Can I say all of them?
Really?
I mean, I'm
surprised. Really, all 12 of them were useful for you, indeed.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess in some way or another, like having the right people in the room. Like if you don't have the right people in the room, you're just wasting your time. And in a startup, you don't have time to waste your time.
No.
I forgot what number 8 was.
It might pay to be pushy sometimes, especially in the age of digital communications.
Yeah, I put a little note next to it after you read it, was read the room. I don't think I personally have that personality to be pushy. So it's something that I've had to strike the right balance of when should I be pushy and when should I wouldn't, or when should I shouldn't. But I also think a lot of the success that I have is because I've kind of been able to read the room and determine when it's okay to be a little bit more pushy and when actually it's been respected for the fact that, we're not. And I've had quite a few people tell me that they like that approach, that they can tell that I'm, kind of reading what it is they think they need at that time. You can go around the back way into a company. I would agree with that. And I think that's important, but I don't think you should focus completely on one company. Like if you're going to keep kind of trying to go after a company in order to get to the right conversation, then you do it on the side of your desk. Don't make it a focus, because otherwise it's a time suck for something that isn't going to be a quick win. So I think there's an element and a balance to all of those in order to drive forward what you need to drive forward, and then really focus your time where you need to focus.
Interesting. I would agree with that, because they are parts of the same concept in a way. They tell a whole picture together, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they all kind of work together, but they won't necessarily be. You don't need to put all your eggs in one of their baskets, because you might alienate someone else or
that's true,
or miss an opportunity.
You know what? My final question, perhaps even an idea, I'd like to discuss with you. So time is on your side, especially in terms of these B2B dialogues as well, as discussed in our previous chat. Reputation and that credibility is really important. Just is for a customer to work with you is an investment. For an investor to pay money to you is an investment. And before people invest in partners, they would like to know their investment is secure to a certain extent, and they look at these small things that have signal value. For example, team size might be of signal value to some people. Revenue might be of signal value to some people. But especially in the world of startups, how long that company has survived by itself, I think, has a signal value as well. So the more you survive, the more years you have behind you or months as a business, especially in B2B type of startups, I think that has some advantages. So like that's one aspect of the problem I'm going to lay out. On the other hand, in my personal experience at least, what happens is usually my ideas that were generated 2 or 3 years ago seem basic or in a way ignorant to myself compared to what I know about that market today, because simply by the fact that I had 2 or 3 years of experience in that area. So for example, if I started Startups of London today, perhaps I would start it as a different business. So in that sense, you're always chasing the dream of the Dash or the Ozan or someone else from 2 or 3 years ago, and it's not always up to date, and it's not the most efficient one, perhaps. So that's the case for reiterating quickly. I think these are the two opposite ends of the spectrum. On the one hand, a new idea is a better idea, but on the other hand, if you always go after the new idea, then you never build credibility because you don't spend time with the business. Have you experienced that dilemma to a certain extent? What do you think on it? And if you knew what you knew today, would you start the same business with everything that you know today?
That's a really good question. I definitely have experienced the dilemma between the two, and I'm always thinking of good ideas. I have a little note in my phone that are all my good ideas, so that once I sell TUBR and start on the next thing, I have a little short list that I can explore. I definitely have had the roller coaster feeling of I did this all wrong, or I would do it so much better if I started over again. And I then have to check myself and say, but every step you took led you to knowing what you know now. And there's no way I could have learned what I have learned over the last 16, 18 months without having gone through this. So it's completely invaluable. And I tried to keep reminding myself of that. When I think about different businesses, sometimes I think, oh, I wish I just had a consumer good. That would be so much easier than technology. Like, why did I pick something so hard? But at the end of the day, I was most passionate about this problem. And this problem has led me to a business I really believe in. And I think sticking with it is part of the reward of that. So that feeling of, oh, could I have done something easier? The reality is, no, I couldn't have done anything easier, because this is all part of a journey that's challenging and it's hard. But But I think we all go through those things where you think, oh, that's a really good idea. I want to work on that too. And you just got to stay focused and drill down and focus on what you need to be successful for right now.
I think it's just wonderful that you have shared this so openly and so transparently, because I think every founder out there experiences this to a certain extent. I certainly have. Sometimes you go and think, is this the best use of my time? And then you have all these other ideas that you can work on. But at the same time, if you switch to another new idea, then it's going to be again day one, and you'll again need 2 or 3, 4, 5 years to build that business up. So it's just a dilemma, and there is no perfect answer to that question. I don't think so. And the answer depends, because sometimes indeed the answer is quit early. I had a business where I started, and 4 months in, I decided to shut it down. I could have kept it going perhaps for 2 years. And sometimes it's just an awful idea. It's just like beating a dead horse. And sometimes it's just like the idea is okay. You need to do better execution. And there is no single correct answer to this question. It's all very, very complex. But the good thing is, as long as you learn intensively and like, if you look back to your version of yourself to 1 or 2 or 3 years ago and think, how ignorant was that person, then I think you're on the right track, because it means you have a very accelerated learning curve.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would say the one thing you have to have is passion about what you're working on. Because if you don't have passion about what you're working on, it will make the days really hard. Yeah. It'll make motivation hard. I think you have to believe in what you're doing. So even if it is a really good idea, but you're a founder that just really hates working on it, then maybe that's one to check yourself on.
Passion is the sustenance of the entrepreneur when things go hard. Dash, many thanks for coming again after a year. Perhaps next year we'll have you as a guest again and talk about what more we have learned. But many thanks. It was great to have you on again. Thank you.
I would love that. And I love Startups of London. So I love what you all are doing. And thank you for taking time to talk to me.
Thank you. Take care.